All right, welcome out. This is day one. We're going to be taking a look at my text. This is it. This is basically my coaching book, career life coaching book, I guess you could say. Education a waste of time? That's the question. Ultimately, you do hear that phrase. People might poo-poo or look down upon degrees, bachelor's degrees, specific degrees. I've seen the videos online where people say, my law degree, totally useless. My business degree, totally useless, and they're throwing them into the fire. Nothing could be further from the truth. Those degrees certainly have value, obviously, and they have a good amount of value. But do they have is their value optimized? Is their value guaranteed? Is the value that which you thought you were going to be getting? Those are good questions, and you always want to be questioning things, without a doubt. So that's why the first line in my book is a question: education, a waste of time? And this is something that you have to work on, or we have to work on, or you work on in conjunction with others, me and maybe others. 7 critical elements needed to fill gaps in your education that waste 5 to 10 years, tens of thousands of dollars. And that's kind of an old title. It's not one that is current. It wasn't written in the last 4 years. And of course, in the last 4 years, we've had massive inflation. Prices of things, groceries up 20-25% or something like that. Gas prices up a good $2-3 a gallon. Mortgage costs up 5-10%. So that's something to take into consideration. Finance, money, essential. Do you have to be an economics major, a finance major? No, you don't. But you have to understand finance well enough to situate yourself for the time being, for the here and now, for your working years into your retirement years. And if you wait, I can tell you, it'll be trouble. A lot of people are running into trouble, have run into trouble, and continue to run into trouble. I read some years back that about 5, maybe 8% of people are retiring comfortably. Majority of people not even retiring with, more than $30,000, $50,000. Some horrendously low number like that. Pensions are not guaranteed like they used to be. Pensions aren't as solid or as plentiful or as profitable, I guess you could say, as they used to be. Okay. So here's the introduction, why this book was written and why it will save you oodles of time and money. One of the first things you have to do is plan out. You have to define things. If you just say, I'm going to get a college degree, whatever it may be, it doesn't matter, college degree. And you've probably heard that statement that with a college degree over your working lifetime, you can make $1 million more than someone without a college degree or just a high school diploma. I don't know if that was ever true. That's certainly not true of all degrees. There are certainly some degrees that you can get that will help you to make less money than you could if you just came out of high school and started working or got a technical degree, a 1 or 2 year technical degree, right? It's very open-ended. Is a college education going to set you up for the rest of your life? No questions asked. It's the end all and the cure all? Of course not. Change is constant. One thing we don't know is the future, right? So things constantly change. And one of the things you have to do is be on top of things. And that's one of the things that I've done for myself, and I've done for my clients, and I've done for my students and anybody else who will pay attention or who cares. So that's important. But today I just want to give you, and I can get into these topics in much more detail, but I'm not going to do that right now. I'm going to give you more of a cursory overview of things, and then as the weeks and months and years go on, we'll get into more detail, right? So anyways, one of the first things you have to do is define. Where do you start? When I started looking into education, I said, well, where do I start? And, there's that phrase, common sense phrase, logical, start at the beginning, okay? So I said, where did education start in the United States, since we live in this country? And I looked up things, I started studying, And I noticed that it began in homes. The mothers, the moms, would teach the kids. The husband was off to work, and the mom was home cooking, cleaning, taking care of the kids. And she would, while she was doing that, teach the kids their letters or the alphabet so that they could read at that time, mostly read the Bible, right? And of course, that modified and changed and adapted eventually. And that's why they called the initial teachers school marms, right? School moms, because most of them were moms. And, they were teaching the basics, reading, writing, arithmetic. And then, of course, it became a little more organized, and classrooms were developed, small schools were built, and so forth, right? And then to what we have now, kind of government funded and run to a degree national schools, right? And I'm talking about the public schools, not the private schools. So, anyways, and as far as you're concerned, where do you begin with you? Well, you have to know you. Do you know you? Most of us don't. We kind of have a feel for who we are, but until you put specific labels, terms to what you are, defining what you are, you really don't know. That's weak sense thinking. Strong sense thinking is knowing specifics, getting definitions down, understanding specifics, defining things, getting the facts, right? Doing your research as exhaustively and as comprehensively as possible. It's not always possible, if ever, to be fully exhaustive and comprehensive, but you want to know to a decent amount, reasonable amount. You only have so much time. So, what are your unique personal interests, skills, and abilities? There are certain things that we come to Earth, come to this planet, where it's inbred, it's inborn, right? I was not born wanting to draw or to work with my hands or be an engineer, car mechanic, some type of physical work like that. That was not me. I was always interested in language. I read a lot of books. Over the years, I've read hundreds, if maybe not 1,000 or more, of books in all kinds of fields. I like learning, and I like passing that learning on to people. So I think I'm in the right field, being a teacher, educator, former teacher, educator, and also career life coach. So, and then, and actually, I really began to feel that I was at home. It took me a while, but better late than never. By the time I was in my mid to late 30s, I was teaching college. Before that, I had worked in the entertainment industry and also in the computer field. But both of those fields left me wanting. I really didn't feel that I was where I needed to be. I wasn't home. And then my first day, or the first time I taught, I was hired at a community college and as an adjunct. And I'm standing outside and I'm talking to my fellow geeks, professors, and I'm going, this is comfortable. This feels really good. This is like home, right? So I know that I'm an open-ended, abstract, creative thinker. So I write. I've written numerous books. I write poetry. I'm a problem solver as well. I've got a good right and left brain. Logical and creative sides of the brain both work well. I can use one or the other. I used to work as a computer programmer. I've also, as I said, written books, science fiction, fantasy, comedy, satire, poems, and so forth. But I knew, that I wanted to do more. So that's when I started to stop reading fiction and started reading nonfiction. I started reading books in the fields of history, economics, theology, philosophy, so forth and so on, science, and started to kind of acquire a general understanding of humankind. I was curious as to why humankind was studying and learning what it was and what it has been studying and learning, right? And that was very, very eye-opening to me, very satisfying, right? But anyways, you have to basically understand who you are, your basic innate natural tendencies, skills, abilities, gifts, desires, inclinations, right? When you wake up in the morning, do you run outside and want to hang out in nature and start observing shape and shadow and form? That's what Leonardo da Vinci did because he was a visual artist, you know. Do you wake up in the morning and the first thing you do is grab the radio and pull it apart, or go to the car and start tinkering with the car? Maybe you're a mechanical type, right? Do you grab a book and start reading? You really love language and learning. That's me, and so forth and so on. So there's all, and you can take this. You might have heard of it. It's called the Briggs-Myers typology test. And there's basically 16 different personality types. And they're pretty accurate. I took the test 30 years ago or so, and I was amazed how accurate it is, how accurate it was and is, still is, I'm sure. And most of what it revealed I was aware of, because by the time I took it, I was in my early mid-30s, so I knew myself pretty decently by that time. But there were other things. There were 5 or 6 points that the test brought up, just blew me away. You know? And I said, that's right, but I never really saw it. I never really was able to put words to it, put a definition to it, put it before my eyes and see it, right? There's a major difference between some ideas or some definitions, lack of definition, just vaguely floating about in the back of your mind, as opposed to bringing it to the forefront and studying it and labeling it and defining it and working with it, right, and refining it. That's what that test did for me and does for most people. And you really have to, once you define yourself, then you want to start acquiring knowledge. What do you want to know? Certainly you want to acquire knowledge in a particular field that will help you earn a living. But at the same time, just out of curiosity, what do you want to know? What do you want to learn? Just go with your gut instinct, right? Your curiosity, right? But after that's done, you start training, getting some training or getting some apprenticeship or taking some classes, whatever it is, right? Or maybe going online and watching some videos, going to some seminars or watching webinars online, whatever it is. All different ways in which you can start acquiring knowledge, right? And skills as well in the physical. Skills are more doing in reality. Knowledge is very, I don't want to say dormant, but it's a very abstract, passive element, knowledge. But skills are more active, right? It's more of a doing in your environment skills, right? Does he have good verbal skills, communication skills, problem-solving skills, right? That type of stuff. There's a survey. If you're talking about achievement, that's the next thing you want to talk about. When you're talking about achievement, you want to set goals. And education certainly is some form or forms of education. You have to devise a plan for yourself, is essential, right? So you want to make sure that you've gotten some type of education or learning thing going on, right? And don't rely on the book or the teacher or the facilities to be the end all and cure all. You might think, I'll go to college, I'll get a degree, and now I'm all set. I'm learned. Now I'm going to become successful, or I'm going to become successful because I went to Harvard. Speaking of Harvard, the next section is even Harvard can fail you. There was a study that was done with some Harvard students, and they found out that the 5% who really did these things, which I will list in a minute, were highly successful. They made more money, and I know money is not the end all and the cure all, but in a case of career and also in career satisfaction, the more you're satisfied with what you're doing, the more likely you are to make more money, not less, right? and to build upon that career because you like doing it. So 5% of a particular graduating class, and they ran this experiment several times, made more than the remaining 95%. Why is that? What were the differentiating factors, right? So the difference maker: focus, planning, understanding, success principles, goal setting, and so forth, right? So it really comes down to the fact that you have to think it through. You have to do some preliminary work, and you have to build yourself up from the ground up, and you have to have a certain series of things that you're doing. For your education, you might even want to go back a little bit, like I did, to learn what education in the United States is or is all about. Go back a little bit in your education, and maybe not primary but secondary, and see what your high school will have a mission statement, right? And see what that mission statement says that graduates will have by the time they graduate. And oftentimes you'll find that a lot of it is just pie in the sky and mumbo jumbo. And there's no checking or certifying or ensuring that students are acquiring these things as they move forward. They will have great people skills. They will be able to interact well with each other. They'll be interested in growing and reinforcing the community locally and international, have an international appeal or flavor or mindset, and so forth and so on. All these things that you're allegedly acquiring as you go through school, high school, and graduate. Do you have those things? Did you get those things? What do you have? What does that high school diploma mean, right? And you want to be able to say it, because when you're looking for work, you'll have ammunition. You'll have something to use, something of power, right? If you know your education, if you know where you came from, where you are, where you're going, then you're really going to be able to put forth a statement to any potential employer, one of great precision, great depth, and great breadth, and follow through. The employer will go, oh my gosh, this is the kind of employee we want. This person really knows themselves. They know themselves. They know their education, where they came from, what they got, what they don't have, what they need, what's missing, the gaps, where they're going, how they're going to fill in those gaps, right? Especially as it applies to maybe their character, but more so maybe to career, working with us, in that regard. So you have to really work on those skills, on your skills, ability, and knowledge, right? Yeah, here it is. You must learn today's most important skill, problem solving, right? Most employers are looking to solve a problem. What problem do I have? Well, my problem is I need somebody to answer the phone and receive people. My problem is that I need some computer applications written. My problem is that I need an entire workforce organized. Whatever it may be, right? That's the problem. And that's why all employees are hired. They're solving a problem. Some are more complex problems, such as CEOs, a little different from a receptionist, right? The CEO's problem solving skills have to be much more of much greater depth and breadth than one would be answering phones, right? That's entry level position. And most people, as it says here, 90% are missing the boat and simply looking for a career or job. You don't want to look for a career. You don't want to look for a job. You want to look for something that will sustain your living, right? You want to build a living, right? It's got to become eventually, maybe not right at the beginning, but eventually it's got to become a holistic event or capacity, right? You've really got to work it so that what you're doing is systemic, right? And why? Well, that's a part of growth. As most of us who've been working for some time know, things are either growing or dying. You're either growing or dying in your relationships. You're either growing or dying in your financial position or positions. You're either growing or dying in your career, right? And most of the people who sustain a career and a good life continue to grow. Sometimes that means shifting to another career, dropping out entirely from what they had initially planned or been doing and then going to something else. Sometimes that means just a shift within the same industry or career, right? There's quite a bit of variance up there. So what are those intangibles? Well, here's a list. This is a list from Napoleon Hill, The Law of Success in 16 Lessons. I think I've pulled out maybe about 14. So there are some basic core things that you need out in the workforce. These are things almost anybody would need. I'm not going to say everybody, but at least 95, 98, 99% of people would need these things, right? Thorough knowledge of one's skills, abilities, and attitudes. We just talked about that. Understanding of personality, traits, weaknesses, and shortcomings. So the first one is your strengths. The second one is your weaknesses. Enhance your strengths, refine your strengths, minimize your weaknesses, right? Define a goal or chief aim, right? Talked about that. Self-confidence. I had zero self-confidence when I was younger. I had to work at it. I had to force myself and prove to myself and build my self-confidence, right? Build my self-confidence, right? Habit of saving, that would be more like investing. I'm not going to go into these in great detail. Again, these are things that I'll cover later on in more detail. Leadership, everybody is a leader, whether you know it or not. Are you alive? Do you have a pulse? Are there people around you, right? If you have brothers and sisters, you're in a leader position. If you're a parent, you're in a leader position. If you have people that you work with, even if you're not in a manager's position, you could be the brand new employee, but you're doing certain things that all the other people are looking at and going, whoa, look at that person. I'm going to acquire some of those skills, right? So we're always in a leadership position. Imagination, that's got to do with problem solving. We'll get into all these again, as I said, in more detail. Focus on going the extra mile. Do you do 100%? I say, that's not bad. How about 500%? How about 1,000%? How about going ballistic, crazy nuts, right? Really working it in that regard, right? Accurate thinking, which is critical thinking, which is something I'll talk about later, again, more detail. Ability to synthesize knowledge with personal insight. You have existing knowledge, that which you've acquired or that which is in the books that you could look up. And then you also have your personal insights, right? That comes from experience. That comes from the intangible, wisdom, gut instinct, right? And just being aware of these things, right? How are you made up as a human machine, right? What are the things you need? What are you? What do you consist of? What do you have? What are you short on? And how do you fill in those gaps? Ability to problem solve, and that has to do with critical thinking, accurate thinking. Well, many of these overlap. Concentration and focus, getting things done quickly, effectively, efficiently. Ability to meet failure head on and learn from it, or to get through it and survive it and not let failure bother you as much. I had some major failure today that I worked through, and sometimes I might scream and hedge and haw, right? I do that on occasion, you know. But it doesn't stop me. It's just, I'm frustrated, let off some steam, then go. Just get right back at it, right? That's fine. Don't hold that stuff in. That's how you get cancer. That's how you get diseases. Let it out. Have a good sense of humor. Let it go, right? Tolerance. That's huge. We can only control so much. How to treat others like you wish to be treated. The golden rule and all that good stuff, right? So that's pretty much it for now on the introduction part of it. In the next section, we're going to talk about, a little bit more about where you begin and the self. Looking at the student's interests, ability, character assessment that I briefly went over. Okay, so that's chapter 1, and we'll get to that next time. So have a good day. Take care.